Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me and my interview with the expert. And today I have the pleasure to welcome Davina MacKail. Hi, Davina.
Hi, Claire. Lovely to be here.
Oh, lovely. So lovely
Well,
to
I'd like to be there near the beach. Probably you are.
on the sunny island in Jersey today. We've known each other for quite a few years actually. I was just looking at it. It's about 3 years now. We've known
Yeah,
each other, and you've been coaching me for that time as well. So it's amazing to have you today and to share you with my tribe here. So it's
yeah.
great to be
Like,
that you're here. So let me just introduce you to those who don't know you and the audience who haven't heard from you. So you are a spiritual educator, master practitioner of hypnosis and practicing shaman. You're also feng shui and space clearing expert, and your latest book was called, is called Feng Shui Basics. You're also a
hmm
dream expert, and you've got a bestseller, which is that was 2010, wasn't it?
yes,
Which was
yeah.
published, and that was Dream Whispered. And something I want to talk to you about as well, I've realized that you're also an alternative branding expert, which is very important, obviously, in customers' loyalty. So we'll talk about that in a little while. But you're a busy lady, aren't you?
I am. Mhm. But you
uh,
see, for me, they're all the same thing.
yeah.
They're all to do with the language of symbols, which we'll get onto with the branding.
Excellent, excellent. So yes, I think what I would like you to share with the audience today is how can they bring a more positive energy into their businesses, offices, so they can deliver a better customer experience. And I've seen one of your conference, and you were talking about logos and branding, and I guess so. Your alternative branding consultation, what makes you different from a normal kind of branding agency or a normal marketing agency?
Mainly because my expertise is very specifically around symbolism. Like a picture tells 1,000 words. It comes from the dream world. I understand a lot about how symbols evoke emotional responses in people. And I think a lot of businesses that I observe don't really understand this relationship. And everything's about relationship, whether it's relationship with your logo, relationship with your building itself, with your customers, or the entire universe is about relationship to something or other. And a lot of businesses I see don't really understand this coherence of relationship between their branding and their logo. They don't not necessarily understand even the difference. So the brand for me is the entire customer experience. It's right down to the music when you pick up the telephone, when you're on hold. It's what the car park looks like, how clean the bathrooms are.
Mm.
It's every interaction that somebody has with a customer has with that business. That's the brand experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the logo is so important because the logo is a little bit like you've got a cake, you've baked the cake and made the cake beautiful, and then you put a cherry on top. And if you look at a picture of a cake without the cherry, it's kind of okay, but that cherry is just like that special little thing. It encapsulates the brand experience, if you like.
Mm.
And that's what, it's not something separate. It's not some fancy little picture that you stick on the top of your letterhead or on the front of your business. That logo is the logos. It's the word. It has to symbolize and encapsulate your brand experience. And I don't think this relationship is something that I observe a lot of businesses really get. And the ones that do are hugely successful. I mean, Apple is the classic
Of course.
example of that. I mean, you just think Apple, that logo immediately springs to mind. And there are some others, McDonald's, Virgin, there are certain Nike, there are certain brands, Coca-Cola. What comes to mind in that split second when you mention the name is the logo.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that logo, then if you actually analyze what you're experiencing, you realize that there's a whole layer of thoughts going through your head in that moment. Just saying those names, that logo flashes to mind, and then a whole load of emotive responses come up in
Yes.
response to it. So you already know that logo, that symbol is encapsulating their brand promise.
Mm.
So it's like you've got to bake the cake first, though.
Mm.
You have to actually decide what your brand experience is. The logo comes last. It does not come first. And again, I think people setting up their business tend to go for the logo. Oh, what's our logo going to be? What's our name going to be?
Yes.
Then they work out what the customer experience is going to be. But actually, it's backwards. You've got to bake the cake before you stick the cherry on it.
Exactly.
And so it's very important to know if your logo comes from having worked through the more boring aspect, perhaps, of what your customer experience is from the second they pick up the phone to you to they do business with you and leave, and then you try to find or you enhance the symbol from that place, it's going to really encapsulate your brand. It's going to really work for you. And it has to work. It has to do a job, because it's when it's this relationship between the conscious and the unconscious mind. It works in dreams as the same way that it works in business. That logo is the conscious bit that people see. It's what's speaking to them, but it's speaking to this emotive response that we're unconscious of, that's just below the surface. Mm-hmm. And if they're not coherent, if they're not talking to each other, then businesses don't tend to thrive. They don't tend to do terribly well. So those two things have to be really tied in together. So the alternative way of what I look at is that logo, is the shape of it, the color of it, the design of it, the flow of it. I do look at a more energetic picture, how one lays out one's letterhead, because all of these, even the size of a normal business card is actually the same as Fibonacci principle. It's worked on a particular sacred ratio. These things are very cleverly designed from eons back, and we've lost this kind of wisdom and knowledge of how these things are, how it's placed. So energy, for example, tends to flow from the bottom left-hand side to the right top corner of the page. So the energy flows, there's movement forward in that place. So a logo placed on the top right-hand corner tends to be more powerful. You want a logo that's got sort of more forward movement, or even if it's on the left-hand side, does it move towards the right in terms of its design or its flow or something of that nature? So looking at how the color, the shape, it's interesting, like in terms of alternative branding, there are 5 primary shapes in the universe, and all logos, all things, all art, everything comes from this, because we have to remember that why this symbol is so important, because we spoke with symbols before we had language. Mm-hmm. We used symbols, cave paintings, very basic things to communicate with each other. So these are very primordial. They speak to a much older, more ancient part of us. So we, as I say, our deepest self responds to a symbol, even though we may not consciously understand what's behind it. So again, this is really important I speak to clients about, well, what is it in your business? What's your dream? So like, for example, the 5 primary shapes, which works also with Chinese medicine, is there's the triangle, which represents fire. So it's more of those reds, purples, that sort of call to action thing. And that tends to denote the company that's more around dreams, or more of a visionary company, perhaps, something of that nature. And it's goal orientated. There's a lot of movement, because inherent within the triangle is the dynamic movement of the Trinity. Then there's the square shape, and you see this a lot in bank logos. They'll have quite a solid square shape, because it is a lot solidity, stable, it's secure, you can trust this company, this is a good company. What are your company values? Are you a growth company? Are you a visionary company? Are you one that wants solid structure and stability? Then you have the circle, and the circle is the metal element, and that's very much about wholeness, it completes something. So, and it also contains something. I'll tell you, very interesting. Just to give a really powerful example of how this works and how things can change before I go into the other two, is the swastika. So the swastika that was appropriated by the Nazis, before that, the swastika was actually around in a slightly different angle, exactly the same, but it was on a triangular shape rather than squared. It ran for 3,000 years. It was a symbol used by Buddhists for peace. It was a peace symbol.
Okay.
So, yeah, exactly. So Hitler took that, turned it 90 degrees, encapsulated it in a white circle. So now it's got wholeness, it's contained, and purity, seemingly, and then put it in a red square, so made it solid and secure. And now has, you see, sort of, and now nobody can look at that symbol and remember that it was actually once a symbol of peace, because
Wow.
it's now become, so it's hugely emotive. It's become associated with war, destruction, the worst atrocities that the world has ever seen. And so one can understand from that story, how all of this, the changing of the symbol, how there's nothing actually inherent in the symbol itself. It is the meaning that we assign to it.
Yeah.
Through how it is used. Before Hitler took that over and very cleverly redesigned it, so to speak, and encapsulated it, it was a full symbol of peace used by Buddhists.
Wow.
So the other thing is the spiral, that spiralic things, like logos, they tend to be about growth. So they're companies that want fast growth, fast movement. It relates to the water symbol, which gives a lot of flow. They're not all, they can have like variable financial fortunes sometimes, like because water flows in and out like the tides of the time. And the last one is the wood, which is the cross type shapes.
Oh, okay.
Anything to do with that, which is more relationship orientated. Now, you might think from your perspective, customer services, that it should all be about relationships, but it depends on the nature of the business in terms of the retail. So perhaps like for very much customer interaction in retail businesses, then symbols that have crosses in might be quite good, or some kind of form. It's obviously these are the basic symbols, but if you look, every logo will contain components of those. And of course you can have logos that contain more than one component, so they can add like a cross within a circle, for example, or something of that nature, so you bring in two of the elements. But every logo, if you analyze it, has these 5 elements, or one of these 5 elements. So I look at colours too, because colours are very, very important. So red, for example, and it's very interesting. I did, when I was doing the banking industry and did a talk on this, I was analysing banking logos. And all the big, strong, like investment banks, the ones where you want your long-term return, your long-term security, big banks, they all have, the majority of them have blue.
Right. Okay.
Which is trust, communication, conservative. Oh yes, you will believe in me. You're going to, and all the high street banks, the ones that have the quick interactions, if you like, HSBC, where you're just going in, paying and taking in your money in and out, all have red in their logo, because red is that call to action. It's emergency. Think about it, the Red Cross.
Yeah.
And it's red, orange and yellow are colours predominantly used in fast food. There's a lot of movement. It speeds up the digestive tract. It's those base chakras will make a quick, instant decision on red, orange, yellow. So McDonald's, for example, Wimpy, all of them have red, orange, yellow in their logos. So you've got that speed. Then green is more to do with health, healing. Obviously, it's been taken, appropriated by the eco movement. So you tend to think, it's going to be healthier for me. It's going to be good for me. It will be natural in some way. White has a sense of purity. So you get a lot of the red and white together. So you've got this call to action, like hospitals, the Red Cross. So you've got this call to action with the red, emergency, danger, got to act quickly. But the white gives a sense of innocence and purity and safety behind that.
Yeah, we're here to help.
And purple tends to be royal, decadent, and chocolate.
Of course. What else?
Cadbury's have actually have a patent out, or not a patent, but whatever, a trademark, I think, on that specific
colour.
of purple.
Excellent.
Yeah, Cadbury's that kind of own us, and that nobody can have quite that purple in their chocolate. It does. It has that luxurious chocolate, silky, sort of decadent feel. Yeah. So again, it's orange is very joyful, but yes, speedy, fast. So if you want to, and over, like you can see it in the FTSE 100, the top FTSE 100 companies, the over 50% have blue logos.
Oh, okay, wow.
With the second most common being red.
Wow.
Because blue is that stability, conservatism, this is a good, strong, stable company. Red is the call to action.
So it comes back to it does come back to emotions. And we were talking to Mike yesterday about communications and first impressions and emotions. And when you walk into a shop or an office and you suddenly you feel good about it. So you've not even walked in, you've just walked through the door and you feel good, or suddenly you don't, and you've got that, ooh, I don't know. There's something not quite right about this. What is that? Why do we feel that?
Because it's hard to say what it is. We're going to, unless we're going to have a discussion on quantum physics, which probably
Okay,
no people
maybe not
listening
that
to
this
people
time.
really want to do that. But it is about energy doesn't disappear. It simply changed form.
Right.
So it's more to do with the history of the building. It's the history of the experience of what has happened there. And I can give you some examples to explain how it works more than what it is, because it is the world of invisible energy. It is the world of quantum physics. You know, there's just stuff hanging around in the air.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if you look at the high street, you'll often find that there's one particular shop or business or whatever, and it just seems to not do very well. It goes bankrupt pretty much on a fairly regular cycle. It doesn't seem to matter what business takes over that space. It will go bankrupt in 6 weeks, 6 months, or whatever it is.
Okay.
And it's because it has a history. History tends to repeat itself. So that's what you're picking up on, that vibe. So people would go into that store and they can almost feel the desperate energy, if you like, of that people going bankrupt, and then they don't feel inclined to buy in there. And so until you clear that history, which is kind of the work I do, until you clear that blueprint out, it's got a blueprint of bankruptcy in the energetic framework. So it's like, you know, it's like we don't actually understand particularly how electricity works, but we hope that when we turn the switch on, the light will come on. It's a bit like this world of quantum physics. We don't exactly know how it kind of works, but, you know, we know that it does affect us.
Yeah.
Because human beings, you know, this is the thing we've known since the beginning of time, that human beings are affected by their environment. Mm-hmm. We are affected by our environment. You know, we have sick building syndrome. We feel good in certain places because of many reasons. It could be to do with the electromagnetic pollution. It could be to do with the fact that we're in a very noise polluted environment where we're just being bombarded, and it's like a different form of stress. Like we get stress with overwhelming work, but we can get techno stress surrounded by electronic items. We can get noise stress, and it's all just penetrating our energetic boundary, if you like, our energetic barrier, and slightly erodes our sense of well-being over the time. These things are quite subtle, and they normally take time to really take effect. And the other thing, give you an example, is if you go, like, you'll find that you can go to a shopping centre or you can go to a museum. Now, you could run around all day, I'm sure you do in your life. Well, I know you do in your life a lot. And you're very busy and you've got loads of energy and you're absolutely fine. But you go to a museum and 2 hours around a museum and you're like, oh, God, I need to sit down and have a cup of tea. You're exhausted. Yes. And you're thinking, why am I so tired? Yes. And it's because of energy of all of that history. It's like the weight of history that is in that building. So you can see again the energy that's affecting you. We have it in our language. Oh, I could cut the atmosphere with a knife.
Yes,
you know, you don't need to have seen you don't need to have seen the argument, but you walk into the space and you can feel it. And it's because as human beings we're sensitive to that environment. We're not separate from it. We are engaged in the atmosphere that is around us all of the time. And so it's that atmosphere, it's what's in that invisible atmosphere is what we're picking up on that affects our emotions.
Yes, and I guess a lot that will also affect employees' performances. So if they're in an environment...
Yeah, absolutely, because if somebody walks in and they're not in a happy environment, it's not a pleasant environment, they're overwhelmed, you're going to get more sick days, you're going to get people who argue more with each other. I mean, a lot of what I get called into businesses to do is for problems like that, where you have a high proportion of sick days, or that you have, arguments in the management team, or nobody's getting on well, and there's no seeming reason for it. So they've got their brand sorted out, they've got their customer experience sorted out, and just everyone's unhappy. And there's no coherence in the business a lot, because you can literally, what part of my work is to clear that so that you get a kind of, draw a line under the past and you get a clean
slate.
Clean slate to begin with. Yeah. It's the same thing as, like, to give a very extreme example, I don't know why I'm all on I must have listened to something about World War II or something today. Right, Auschwitz is another one. Visited Auschwitz. I don't know what it was. I was listening to a Radio 4 interview last night with Margaret Hodge, and she was talking about this. You go there, and obviously people get overwhelmed by the feeling because of obviously the horrific history that's happened there. People just spontaneously burst into tears. They can't deal with it. They can't stand. So all of that history is still in that space, and so it's overwhelming. And on a far lesser, or if business, for example, has been built on a bad, a site where maybe a battle took place in the past, or maybe someone was killed in the past, or some bad history happened on that land energy can affect space and affect the building and affect the business that's happened there.
And I guess that comes back to what you're saying in your about your book, and you say I love Feng Shui because I'm passionate about changing people's relationship with their home, and I always talk about rapport. I always talk about relationship between people, whether it's at work or whether it's personal. But I've never seen it like that, and it's true. That relationship with bricks and mortar and how it's really impact you every day because you're in those buildings.
It does happen. Yeah, and they may not be as chatty as, but we have it again. We have it in our language. Walls have ears, and for me, they do. And literally, buildings speak. They're just a little bit denser. But everything in our universe, again back to quantum physics, is all vibrating at a particular resonance. So we tend, because that's the way we've been trained and conditioned in our Western mindsets, to think it is a pile of inanimate bricks and mortar. But for me, that building has a living spirit. There is actually something living in that. It has a consciousness of some degree. Obviously it's not, unfortunately can't do the accounts for us or do reports. It would be nice, but it does have a consciousness and it does house the people. So yeah, we do need a relationship with it, and you can, especially business owners, can really work on building that relationship with the building to get the building to actually work for them rather than against them.
Yeah, and I think I do a lot of work with businesses in the environment and the kind of the journey that customers walk through. Where do they see? What things are in display? How does it affect? And that kind of things. So if there was 3 top tips you could give our business owners that are listening to us today, what could they do to go back and actually do something that could really change the energy in their business straight after we've had that interview? What could they actually do?
Okay. So if a business owner really feels that they've got like my quick and just shift the energy, if it thinks, gosh, yeah, they could do with a clear out in here, go and open all the windows and doors.
Right. Yes.
Literally just let a change of air come through the system. That's one of the simplest, easiest. Just open the front door, the back door, all the windows, and let a change of environment sweep through the building. That can be one of the most powerful things right there. It's simple, it's easy. I recommend doing it often because we get very stuffy, toxic environments just in that. You can use plants bring in nature. Plants are fantastic at altering our environment. NASA did this. NASA, when they were sending astronauts into space, did a huge amount of research of how they could introduce plant life that would change the atmosphere and introduce good atmospheres into the space capsules for astronauts. And as a result of that, literally certain plants will soak up things like formaldehyde or outgassing from new furnishings if you've got a new build office, and because some people think, oh, I've got a brand new office, I've just bought all my new furniture, it's going to be fantastic, but those things all outgas chemicals, especially in a hermetically sealed air-conditioned environment. So plants are a fantastic help. So bring in nature. There are certain plants, orchids, peace lilies, things like this, the bromaldehydes, the particular type of fern, are very, very good at absorbing chemicals in the atmosphere. So plants are a really good way of bringing in a better atmosphere. And also you can use ionizers, air humidifiers, aromatherapy diffusers that have water in these. All really help just the atmospheric presence of being able to. And just in terms of the general feel of a space, because you're dealing with retail particularly, is less is more.
Yes.
You don't have to have everything on sale all at once. I go in and you see, it's very off-putting for a customer to go in and it's just like, oh, I don't know where to look first.
Yes, there's just too much.
Because, and I think owners, they just want to sell everything. They want to show, they want to display all their wares. But actually, sometimes it's best to keep it in the stock room and just have less so that it feels spacious, that it feels clear, that it feels really look at giving that environment that's so much more important, that sense of feeling of spaciousness, and don't clutter the doorway so that you want to walk into space.
Brilliant.
If you see what I mean. So
Yeah,
so
yeah.
really clear the way through the doorway. And always in terms of just being aware of what that, what repeats, what stands out, what's exaggerated. It's a good little top tip just to have from a feng shui perspective. It's like one of something's fine, 20 of something probably isn't. No. And we don't see our stuff until we see our stuff.
Yes, and
That's really what my job is, to point people's stuff out.
That's
it's
it.
like, hello.
Yes, and sometimes that's what it is. It's somebody coming into that environment that you see every day, and
Yes.
you're just pointing it out, and they say, "Yeah, I've never thought about that before," because they're just so used to it, and it just gives them that.
And have something a little bit zingy in the shop window. I mean, obviously, I know you talk about, tell people all about the wonderful window displays and all the rest of it, but something very juicy and attractive. I normally suggest a little bit of red in the window. Red is a color of abundance. It brings in action. It's that call to action again.
Mm-hmm.
Could just be, something in, maybe something they sell, or a particular red plant that you've just got. But a bit of colour in the window is very attractive. It draws people in.
Yeah, you'll get eyes going.
And I know, and I really saw that. In fact, I had to go in just and tell this woman this. I'm completely raving bonkers. But anyway, but it's like in a place where I lived recently, I was getting to know my little local town. It's like a large village, so it's got a few interesting shops there. And I'd been in every shop, and I realised after I'd lived there a couple of months that there was this one shop I just never went in. And it was very apparently nice. I'd looked in the window, there was nice things for sale in there. It was the kind of shop I would normally have gone in, had a nose around. And I just noticed, and I thought, this is really interesting. There's something, and I realised that the shop was almost like going keep out.
All right.
Because just couldn't. And in the end, I just thought, I've got to actually just make that. And it was very austere. The window was completely austere. It was dark. Mm-hmm. There was nothing. It was all very muted, because was kind of she sold very upmarket muted things. Mm-hmm. But just if she'd have had a splash of something in that window, just a bit of colour, a bit of life. There was no life. It was too still.
Yeah.
So a bit of a plant in the window, just something, a bunch of flowers. I know they might not seem an obvious thing to put in a retail display, but it's amazing how that bit of nature, that bit of warmth can actually draw people in.
Oh, fantastic. That's brilliant. Well, wow. You just have to go and do it now, don't you? Yeah. Davina, thank you so much for sharing your wealth of experience today during Customer Service Week. It's just amazing. Just to finish off, if people want to know more about you or download your book, or where do they need to go?
The best way is via my website, which is just davinamackail.com.
Perfect. So I'll put the link after the video, so you can just click on it and you'll be able to go and reach out for Davina if you need anything else on that. So thank you so much to be with us, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks for having me on. Have a great have a rest.
Thank you.
Customer experience.
Bye.